Hey guys, Coach Moss here. So I wanted to just take a minute to go over finding roots when not given any on your Unit 3 review, and there's a couple things I like on 3.3 where you have to find the zeros of a given like polynomial inequality in different forms, but you're going to use the same steps when you do that. I've also posted another video where a guy named Brian McLogan, who's very well known on YouTube for his videos on math, he also does a lot of practice examples with those, so I posted those as well because he's great. I mean, he just explains things so well. So I definitely recommend, if this doesn't help you, to look at those as well, and then if we need to work some together, we always can. So when you are finding roots of a given equation or polynomial, you'll have to start with whatever the first and last term are, the coefficient of those. So the last one is technically called your P. I'm going to try to hold this to where I can like hold down my paper as well. And then the first one is your Q. So the rule for finding zeros is that you put P over Q, in our case, which would be -3 over 1. And you have to list the factors of each of those on the top and the bottom. So for the top, you have to make sure that you include a positive or negative sign. We have 1 and 3, and for the bottom, we only have 1. So technically, we could have 1, -1, 3, -3 as our zero. All right, so what I do from this point, I highly recommend graphing it. All right, once you graph it, which is what I've done here, we see that we have -1 and technically 3 both as zeros. So I'm going to choose one of them to go ahead and graph. Let's see which one I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and use 3 to not graph. I'm sorry, from the graph. You can either use -1 or 3. You should be able to solve it either way. I'm going to use 3, and I'm going to use synthetic division. I know that 3 is a 0 because I graphed it, and because it also belongs to the P over Q factor group. So I'm going to use +3 because that's where it crossed on the x-axis, and I'm going to do synthetic division. I have 1, -1, -5, and -3. I also wrote out the rules here. So if you need to pause, take a screenshot, do whatever, these are the steps of finding the factors of both. Graph the function, choose one from the list that appears on the graph for synthetic division, factor the polynomial that you're given, and then if you can't factor, you use -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. All right, hopefully we won't have to do that here. I think I did make it to where that second one we do. So then I get 3, I get 2, 6 times 3, I'm sorry, 2 times 3 is 6, -5 and 6 make +1, +1. And if you get 0 as your remainder, then you're good. That means that it was done correctly. So then I'm left with x squared plus 2x plus 1, which obviously becomes x plus 1, Say, but I also have to remember that I also have that 3. So I still have x minus 3 in there as well. So my zeros, or my roots, would be 3 and then -1 twice. So I'm just going to put multiplicity of 2 there. All right, and that is how you end up finding your zeros. All right, and also, I mean, you can check by graphing it. You can see that it bounces off -1, so we will have a multiplicity of 2 there and a multiplicity of 1 at x equals 3. But this isn't always just as easy as graphing it and looking, and you do have to be able to do it mathematically. So that is why we are learning this here. All right, so on the second one, I'm going to do the same thing. I've got my P, and I've got my Q. Here we go, P over Q, which means I've got -27 over 1. My factors will include positive or -1, 3, let's see, 13927. I think that's everything, and that's all over 1. So I'm just going to leave it just like that. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and graph it. We've got x squared plus 7x squared, and I'm using Desmos. You can use any kind of graphing calculator to graph it, plus 3x squared, and then minus 27. All right, so once I graph that, I'm looking for a 1, a negative, positive, or negative, 1, 3, 9, or 27. So out of all of those, the only one I see is negative 3. All right, so I will be able to use negative 3 for synthetic division. All right, I have 1, 7, 3, and negative 27. All right, I'm going to bring that 1 down. We've got negative 3 gives me positive 4. Get negative 12, which gives me negative 9. Negative 9 times negative 3 is a positive 27, and again, we get 0. Perfect. All right, I will end up with x squared plus 4x minus 9. All right, unfortunately, I already know that this is something I'm not going to be able to factor. So I will have to use x is equal to negative b, which is negative 4, plus or minus the square root. There's like a song that goes with it. I don't know if y'all know it, but that's the only way that I know it. B squared, I'm going to go ahead and write that, 16 minus 4 times 1 times negative 9. So 4 times 9 is actually going to be 36, all over 2a, which is just 2 in this case. All right, so once we simplify this, we'd end up with negative 4 plus or minus 2 square roots of 13 all over 2. You can even simplify this again to make it negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 13. And so we have this as a 0. And we also, I wish it looked nicer. And then, which obviously it would if we like did the square root, but we don't need to. Like it'll still be just an ugly decimal. And then we also have that negative 3. So we also have negative 3 here. And these will be our zeros. All right, and that is what we've got. I'm just going to zoom out just a second just to show you if you need to pause at any point so you can make sure to get those steps or go back through it. You're more than welcome to.